Hey, hello everyone. I think our panelists are getting themselves off mute and on camera now. So I'll take an opportunity to say hello and to welcome you all to the panel. I'm thrilled to be here having this conversation with this incredible group, part of this amazing event. It's a shame that we're not all in the same room, but on the other hand, we were kind of able to gather panelists from a pretty diverse group of places, which I think perhaps we wouldn't have been able to do in a live setting. So there's that silver lining, and you all are all here and able to ask questions, and we hope you'll participate. We'll take questions via the Q&A or the chat. Either way, we'll do our best to see those and to answer them. So we're talking about pivots in the restaurant industry, in the food industry, in the catering industry. It is obviously all we've been doing this year. It feels like is pivoting and reacting and pivoting again. In my role at Resy and at American Express, we've been trying very hard to be as reactive as possible to the needs of the restaurant partners that we work with, and to card members as well. And I could say on the Resy side, especially, we work with 5,000 restaurants. Most of them are small businesses. Most of them, employ lots of people who are passionate about hospitality and about restaurants, and are working not because it's the best paying job, but it's because the one that they're passionate about. So it's been quite an interesting experience to see how this industry has responded, and from where I'm sitting, it's been very inspiring. The people who work in food are generally not in it for the money. They're in it for the passion, and so and I think as a result, the food industry has really set a tone for lots of other industries, and the ability that we've found to grind through, to find solutions, to make it happen, to keep the lights on. It's been incredible, to watch. And so we have a group today that's been on the front lines of that experience, and in many cases have been, setting the tone day to day and doing the things that have inspired us and that others have followed suit and done as well. And so we're going to talk to the group today about how we've been thinking about pivoting, how we're sort of looking at the world right now, and perhaps what we hope for the future. I want to start by introducing the panelists, and then we'll get into some conversation. So I'm just going to go in order of how I see people on the screen. I have no idea if that's how you see them, but first next to me is Kathleen of Rethink Food NYC. She's the Director of Policy and Planning at Rethink. She's been with Rethink since 2019 and runs the Government and Strategy Department, which I think in many days during this crisis has been, she's been the person who's been telling the government to figure it out, to get themselves in gear. About Rethink, I was looking for a description, and I saw this, which I really liked. Rethink has served 1.25 million meals, fresh meals so far, and strives to feed people in the most dignified and healthy way possible. I think in terms of the way that the organization has pivoted, Rethink used to use restaurants as food supply, and has pivoted to using restaurants as manufacturing and processing. And sort of discovered very early in the crisis that all of these restaurant kitchens being idle was not a particularly good way for them to be, and chefs and cooks and restaurant people would much rather cook food and package it up and feed people. And Rethink was very quick to help them do that. And in fact, at American Express, we were very proud to partner with them on a couple of initiatives, including turning 11 Madison Park into a community kitchen of sorts. Next to her is Irene. Irene is the chef and owner of Mei Mei in Boston, which opened in 2013. Irene has all the accolades, Food and Wine. It's been featured in Eater, New York Times, Bon Appetit, Boston Globe. Has really set a tone in Boston. Forbes 30 Under 30, Eater Young Guns. I think you get the idea. She's also on the board of Commonwealth Kitchen, our friends in Boston, a food incubator there. And interestingly, Irene, even before we were in the deep, dark recesses of this crisis, in early March, opened up her P&L for the world to see, a real sort of statement about how hard this restaurant business is in the first place. And an extremely bold move, actually. You know, a lot of restaurants talk about how hard the business is. Very few open up their P&L. And for her, the pivot is that the business is turning from a restaurant into a CPG company. It will be dumplings, frozen dumplings, and dumplings, I assume, that will be shipped all over the country and perhaps the world someday. But you're going to see that a lot. Restaurants going from being restaurants to doing other things with the skills and the brand. Lynnette is next, is the founder of Speed Rack, is one of New York's most distinguished bar people, mixologists, whatever your preferred nomenclature is. And she is the bar director at Lama Inn and Lama San, two amazing restaurants which have gotten tons and tons of recognition over the last couple of years. Blazed onto the scene in Brooklyn, I want to say about 3 years ago. And she's also at Speed Rack. Speed Rack is an organization that is using high-speed female bartending competition to really raise money and awareness for breast cancer research, and they've raised more than $1 million so far. And she's also on the board of the Restaurant Workers Community Foundation. And so it's sort of silly to talk about a particular pivot for Lynnette, because I feel like all she's been doing this year is pivoting. And certainly Restaurant Workers Community Foundation has been at the forefront of advocacy for restaurant workers in this crisis, and it's been an incredibly important organization and resource for the community. I'm being told we have to move a little bit faster. So Natalie is next. She's the CEO of Hatchery in Chicago. And as she describes it, our goal is to be in the trenches with entrepreneurs to better help them launch and grow their businesses. She describes it as a startup for startups. And Natalie, as you'll see as we get into the discussion, really has had, I think, probably sort of the most high level view on what's going on. Is also a writer and a trendsetter and a trend forecaster and a strategist, and has sort of been watching this crisis from 40,000 feet, so to speak. As far as Hatchery goes, also has pivoted into a model where they're feeding people in the community. Hatch Made Meals, which provides small catering businesses with a steady stream of revenue, and all meals created or donated. A pivot similar to some of the others that we've seen. And last but certainly not least is Helah, who founded 10 years ago Jpo Concepts, which is first of all, it's 10 years old. Any business that's lasted 10 years, we could stop there and you'd understand the accomplishment. But now it's a multi-million-dollar company that owns and operates event space in Manhattan, and has more than 30 people on the payroll. an event space in Manhattan is not exactly the business that you dream up on March 15th, but she's really, she's pivoted into, excuse me, also a company that feeds people in the community, and they have packaged and served more than 25,000 meals so far. So I want to shift now. So those are my distinguished panelists. Thank you all for being here. And now let's get into the conversation. So I guess what I want to start with, and I'll put this out to the group, is, you know, this has been, we're talking about things in sort of the pandemic context, but in fact, 2020 has been a crazy year, an unprecedented year for many reasons. Obviously, George Floyd and the conversation, the explosion of conversation that's happened around racial justice and equality. We have a massively historic election coming up. And so just to sort of level set for the group, I've been struggling at times to stay sane through all this. I just want to put out to the group, you know, how are you guys processing day to day, week to week, month to month? What are the things that you're doing to stay sane? Kathleen, let's start with you.
Well, it's a very good question. I mean, honestly, I say this all the time to people that don't know Rethink, or the people that work at Rethink. It is my coworkers that help me stay sane, and the organization has drawn unbelievable people. And, you know, we always have worked at such a really fast, like rapid pace, and, you know, we're still pushing, but we've really, I think, done a good job of being able to step back and allow, you know, our existing staff and then the growing team to really talk about the issues that our society is facing. And, you know, every meeting doesn't always have to have an agenda. You know, sometimes we just need that space and time to talk. So I would say for me, it's been my coworkers, either during the day or finding little pockets of time to catch up over Zoom or grab a beer over FaceTime, and try and find those different pockets of time to really connect with each other and hear what people think, how we should change and grow our organization, and what we should do as an organization to support the different initiatives.
Irene?
That's such a great answer. I mean, getting to actually see people these days at work is like kind of magical. And so certainly getting to be with the team is really important to me, to my sanity on a day-to-day basis. And I guess I would also add that, you know, in recent years, I was working less and less with actual food. And so with layoffs in our company, with changes to the schedule and the number of people that we can actually staff, I have my hands on a lot more food than in years. And so, you know, in a time when lots of things don't make any sense, getting to actually cook, which is why, you know, I started on this journey in the first place, that's something that has been very grounding for me.
Cool. Lynnette?
Well, for me, it's kind of jumping into everything without traveling the world to be doing speed rack events globally, which we were going to be launching Argentina this fall, which would have been our second Spanish-speaking country, heading back to Asia and Australia. You know, when all of this happened, it was kind of like a stop gap, and all I know how to do is to keep busy and working. So instead of travel to airports and being on airplanes, I threw a lot of that work into the Restaurant Workers Community Foundation initially. My restaurant groups kind of took a quick, you know, early on stop, close. We didn't do much to go, and actually stopped all of that for a little bit. So everyone could we could just take care of our team, let everyone, you know, figure out what they need to do to feel safest. Provided, you know, still some work for some of our workers who needed some during that time, and they would come in, take care of the plants, that kind of stuff, set up a pantry, did an auction. So I threw myself into fundraising either for our teams, for the people, and then the rest of the time fundraising, helping, you know, a very young foundation like the Restaurant Community. We were like, oh my goodness, we just started 2 years ago, and now it's like our complete and total mission has just been dropped in our lap, which were always things that we wanted to get to, but it was supporting organizations like Hot Bread Kitchen and all these organizations that we saw who were doing great work, but then we had to figure out how to be an action group on our own. And that was, I spent a lot of time working on our program that we're going to launch for zero interest loan program, working and helping doing PR and other things to make sure that those who are most vulnerable were seeing where our relief program was, helping to get all of our assets translated into multiple languages, working with the comms team. So it was just fill that time with things that you never find time to do, and you had to do it then, and it was crucial to make that happen right then. And now it's a time of figuring out how we pass a lot of that off and really know how to be set up in the future so it's sustainable for the rest, and to make sure we keep organizations that are still working during this time, make sure that they can keep doing the work that they do. So keeping a focus as well, and I do that as well with SpeedRack, because it's just because it's COVID and quarantine doesn't mean people aren't suffering from breast cancer and don't need that kind of support. So there's still a lot of work to be done with awareness and what we can do to make sure people are paying attention.
Nice. Natalie?
Well, I think the first thing is it's okay to not be okay. So I don't know if I'm sane, I don't know if anyone's sane, but that's okay. And I think I agree with what Kathleen said too. I think giving people space and time, especially a safe space to be able to communicate that, everybody copes differently. And it's also, when we take things out of the office and you're in your home, you have a family, you have distractions, there's a lot that occurs that we just don't factor in when we're in office. So it's important for us to just take a breath and recognize that we don't know everything that's going on, but we want to give people the time to work through it. And I think especially for the entrepreneurs who are on here, your first reaction is to dive deeper into your work. And I think everybody's already a workaholic. And some of the best pieces of advice we've heard from successful entrepreneurs is do something completely different. Find a new hobby, learn a new language. I started trying to do teacher training for Pilates. And the reason is mostly that will give you great perspective that will actually help your business. And we think the further we dive into our business, the more we understand and the better we'll become. But it's actually in removing yourself that you can really get a fresh look at what's going on and hopefully bring external insights into what you're doing. So take a break from it. Don't feel like you have to go 110% right now further into what you've already been doing. And I think, Ben, to the point that you made about all of the issues that are rising up to the surface right now, these are issues that always existed in this industry and others. And I think that the pandemic just heightened everything. And one thing we've said as an organization is that if things go back to normal, we haven't done it right. And so it's important for us to know that when the pandemic is over, when there is a little bit more rest, that doesn't mean these problems aren't still occurring. And so we have to keep them top of mind to think through diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how do we improve this industry, because this just reveals everything that was already an issue.
100% agree. Helah.
Hi. So actually, to build on what Natalie just said, I think what kept me personally very sane is the pandemic forced us to go back to our core, to our roots, to our values. The pandemic caused us to basically strip down the company back to its fundamental basis. That gives you a lot of time to start being pickier and more crucial about improving everything there is about your company. So whether it's spending more time getting to know your employees, giving them a platform to express their emotions, what's important to them, whether it's to backtrack and decide, I didn't need 6 offshoots of my brand last year, whatever it might be, it kind of forced us to take a giant step back, rethink everything we've been doing and prioritize. Pick which parts of the business mean something to us that we feel have a future that we should build upon, and what part of the business that maybe it's time to let go. So that's actually kept me sane. It's the equivalent of a giant closet organizational project, which we know is very satisfying. That plus some bad television and long walks, I think is very grounded, throughout this whole process. And it's nice taking a closer look at what you've been doing for 10 or 11 or 2 years. You do get sucked into this tunnel. We all on this panel probably have worked 80-hour weeks frequently in our careers. And it's really important to have time to digest a little. So for that part, and that part only, I'm very grateful about the last 7 months. And that's what's kept me sane enough to be here.
It's interesting as I'm listening to these answers, these are sort of recipes for a pivot generally, right? Like anytime you're thinking about your business and you say, let me take it, the things that you do before you pivot, you take a step back, you think about things differently, you spend some time with coworkers. It's interesting that when we talk about pivot in the context of this year, it's sort of that the year is set is a sort of a perfect stage. It's sort of the perfect conditions for pivots in a way. The specificity of the crisis aside, it's just the conditions are right. So Natalie, just to sort of like last thing, sort of on level setting, can you just, because you've done some writing on this. I think as I said, I feel like you have a really good sort of high level view of what's going on. If you can just sort of frame up, the devastation that has been brought on the industry since the start of the crisis.
Yeah, I think everybody here has felt it. Everybody joining, whether in the audience or on this panel, I think everyone's felt it in different ways. But certainly, this is a very powerful industry. And one thing that we've all become hyper aware of is that the food industry is an essential business. We knew the term, we were deemed the term before. I think this is the first time that it's being put to use. And so with it actually comes a lot of opportunity. I think there's a lot of businesses that are not deemed essential. And I think that's very telling of how important this industry is. But I also think we haven't seen the end of it, and we haven't seen the full effects. And I think that's important to note, is that we have to encourage people to be aware that this isn't just I bought a meal from my local catering company and that's it and everybody's okay. Restaurants were not designed to function at 40 or 50% capacity. In most cases, they barely break even at 100% capacity. So, being in Chicago, I'm very concerned about what happens when the winter comes and we cannot use all of the expanded outdoor dining space. And how do we really think about supporting these restaurants and catering companies and small businesses going forward? That being said, I think the most important thing to look at are the opportunities and how do we all play a role here? And I think it helps us reevaluate the full supply chain of what my role is as a consumer, what my role is as a business owner, what my role is as a supplier, as a distributor. And what we've started to explore are those opportunities and what we've deemed as the E-store. So we all know the C-store convenience. We're starting to explore what an E-store as an essential business means, because now, and this was the great example given with the vacant restaurant spaces, how do you now utilize that space? And that's happened a lot here in Chicago too, where one restaurant is now acting as 3 different concepts, whether it be a ghost kitchen, a pop-up, a kitchen within a kitchen. And so there's some interesting ideas, but there's also gyms that are not being used that can be turned into micro markets or meal pickup platforms. So there's a lot of ways that we can start to rethink how the industry functions, what consumer behavior will look like moving forward. We've already seen that with retail environments. We know that food service establishments will change. They'll likely shrink in size, start to use more outdoor space, start to build a space for pickup and delivery. And then your regular supermarket might end up converting half the space into fulfillment, half the space into a more experiential, customer-friendly space where it's a place of discovery. We're rethinking things like the bulk bins and hot food bars, which will probably never go back to the way they were. So what will those spaces be converted into? So we're encouraging entrepreneurs right now to think about that, because you can build an incredible relationship with your local buyer or retailer, because they're thinking of these ideas too. So if you can get in front of them quickly and say, I'd like to help you as a producer, think about how to make this space useful, and then you can build something together. So I think there's an immense amount of devastation. We haven't seen the end of it, but there's also a great deal of opportunity. And that's what is exciting to us.
No, I mean, I think that that's right. I think we'll talk about that a little bit. I think in terms of devastation, I think you could, in some parts of the country, I've been spending some time in the West Village of Manhattan, and it's a lucky place to be able to spend some time. And if you walk around in this neighborhood, you see lots of people out and about, like a Saturday night feels like a Saturday night, but that is really not the reality of what's going on. I can say from looking at restaurant volume cover numbers, even a good city that seems like it's on a good path is down 50 or 60% year over year. Similar numbers from a revenue perspective. I saw Sean Feeney on Instagram this morning. Sean Feeney runs Lily in Brooklyn, predicting that 85% of restaurants would close. So we'll see where it lands. So I think one thing, as we've already been talking about, in terms of the pivots that are being made, something that struck me is how there has just been a sort of unconditional, relentless priority placed on feeding people. And I guess that's to be expected because it's the food industry after all. But I think it was interesting to see how I think selfless it was. We sort of just unconditionally said, well, we just have to go feed people. And both ourselves and our communities, right? The theme has been, we have to feed ourselves and our communities. And I do think at some moments those things can, to some extent, be at odds. So I wanted to ask the group, starting with Irene, how do you think about balancing what's best for the community with what's best for the business?
That's such a good question. I mean, I think that sort of to Helah's point, we also have taken this time to really ask ourselves, what is Mei Mei? And, if Mei Mei is not a restaurant and it's something else, what are those core values and the characteristics that really make this business what it is, regardless of what it is we sell or how we sell it? I think that probably lots of us right now are kind of asking ourselves, like, how is what I do useful to someone else? And I think that a lot of people are considering career changes, getting involved in community work in new ways, especially with the growth in like mutual aid networks, which has been really incredible here in Boston. And so, my feeling generally has been, if we can't be useful, and not just to our paying customers, right, but to our community more broadly, then we probably should go do something else. And I think one of the things that is so important about restaurants and our desire to feed people is that these are our own people. Restaurant workers make up, I think, almost half of minimum wage workers in the country. And so when we're talking about feeding people who are suffering from food insecurity, we're talking about our own people. And so I think that there's a take care of our own kind of spirit that is really, really important. And I think that is what I have seen flowing through a lot of the feeding, emergency feeding and aid work that is happening here in Boston that we've been involved in through Off Their Plate. And Project Restore Us, which is a collaboration between Mei Mei, a restaurant called Pagu, and Commonwealth Kitchen, where we delivered over 100,000 pounds of food straight to the doorsteps of immigrant workers, many of whom were restaurant and other essential workers. And so I think, there's this way that people like to say that we're all in this together. And I think in many ways that is true. And in many ways, unfortunately, it is not quite true. But I do think that that means there is room to really move that needle and to think about how we are, as Lynnette said, paying attention to the people who are the most vulnerable. So I think that really leveraging what restaurants have to offer in terms of supply chain, kitchen skills, and people's time, that is a kind of abundance that I don't think I mean, I don't know if restaurant owners typically feel like, oh, we have so much to offer. And so in a way, that's kind of a special time, and having this sort of light shown on us and having the opportunity to really step up in that way.
Anyone else have thoughts?
So I just kind of building on what she just said, community, what's good for the community is often what is good for your business. They go hand in hand. And the most simple example, and I'm sure other small business owners can relate, as much as there's a desire to help your community, you also look at your employees and your team as part of your community. And so for us, the pivot to be able to feed the community, as important as that is, and still is for us. The need first started with the desire to keep our team employed, to keep food on their plates, to keep their paychecks coming in. The fact that we're able to feed thousands of people in addition to that, well, that just makes it 10 times more impactful. But the priority really started with our own micro community, making sure that our employees, our event cooks, our waiters had paychecks. And I think that's where you go back to prioritizing what your core values as a company is. What's more important, ensuring that your employees have a paycheck, or ensuring the business is profitable this year? So as soon as you make that very easy, what I found a very easy decision to say, keeping these people employed, keeping food on their plates is in turn a huge contribution to our local community and economy, then it's a very, very easy pivot. And as soon as you determine that, it dictates everything you do afterwards, and all the pivots, all the decisions become very easy thereafter. So I think assessing what was most important, whether it be your team or your local community, translated into what is best. And it is best for the company. So although it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to show a profit this year, which if you can do, I would love to talk to you, about that. But if you can make sure that you still have paychecks, and beyond that, retain incredibly talented employees, that's a huge success. And I think defining success is really part of your decision to pivot. Is success making a profit, or is success just saying, my 15 employees are making an honest, living, and I still retained incredible talent at this company for when things do start to open up next year.
So Helah, so let's talk about, so how did you at the outset define the successful pivot? What were the KPIs that you were focused on?
Yeah, for us, I wish I could say our initial success was to feed the community, but that was almost the means of which, ended up being to reach our goal. So we are a events and venue catering company. So we are exposed on so many different fronts, like restaurants. Our venues weren't permitted to operate. Our catering clients dried up overnight. So we were hit from multiple directions. And what I realized is, although each one of our business models had to find a way to pivot, I needed to first keep the lights on. I think people who are not entrepreneurs don't realize how difficult it is to hit the pause button and then turn the lights back on 6 months later. It's not that easy. It's like a machine. Once you turn it off, it is very difficult to turn it back on. So my agenda for the first few weeks, and those first very important few weeks, were keep the lights on, keep the facilities doors open, and keep the core team employed. And I decided at sparing no cost to needing to accomplish that singular goal. And everything else we were able to do after that were, quite frankly, due to the fact that I was able to keep the lights on and keep the core team employed. We were able to react quickly. We were able to serve the community. We were able to seize opportunities, because there have been, I know you spoke about this earlier, there have been incredible business opportunities, but they're only available to those companies who are still open and still have a team and bandwidth to receive and capitalize on those opportunities. So priority number one was keep the team intact. And it wasn't that easy. I mean, the first few weeks, there were periods of time where it was money out of pocket to make sure that your team can feed their families and pay rent. And it was very frightening as a business. But hopefully, in retrospect, it was the right decision.
Kathleen, how did you guys think about what made a successful pivot for Rethink?
That I always laugh about this because when people ask me that, like I think back to the first day, and it was Friday, March 13th, and Matt, was like, we're going to run Rethink 24 hours a day. We're going to, pop up, mobile, like mobile stoves and kitchens, like in the Brooklyn Navy Yard where our commissary kitchen is. And we had the opportunity to kind of just like pause, think about, okay, that as we learn more about the virus, how do we safely serve more people? And we realized that wasn't the best idea. And, as restaurant people, primarily that work at Rethink, we were like, okay, there's existing infrastructure that's there. It's empty, it's dark. We're seeing an increased need for food, and we're keeping, restaurant workers aren't able to work and provide for themselves. So it kind of clicked after like 2 weeks, 3 weeks, like we should work with restaurants that, who we worked with previously. And the successful pivot for us was leading with the community, and not that we hadn't pre-COVID put an emphasis on those that we served, but really asking the community leaders that we worked with the existing pre-COVID and the new individuals that wanted to work with us, what they needed and how we could save them money in the long term by, so that they didn't have to spend money on providing food. And by doing that, we were able to create a demand for restaurants to partner with community organizations to feed culturally appropriate food, to by leading with the community in our pivot, that really helped us build and scale where we are at now. And it's I love to think back to that first day, because everyone loves to talk about their pivot, and we have this joke, there's like a business plan. There was the original business plan of the our COVID response. And, once we realized that if we paid greater attention and listened more to the people that we were feeding, it would benefit all of us and our restaurant partners.
Amazing. I'd love to see that initial business plan at some point.
I'll send it over.
So shifting gears a little bit, you've got a sort of, I think we've established sort of the community is a key stakeholder in all this. Your people is a key stakeholder in all this. So what's also interesting is, as we were talking, as this group was talking in a call a couple of weeks ago to get ourselves prepared, what also came up is that in many cases, competitors are stakeholders in a pivot. And all of a sudden competitors become collaborators. And so I was hoping we could spend a little time talking about that. Helah, what are your thoughts there?
Sure. So, since we do have a few different client-facing services, I'll give you two quick examples. The first one was with our venues, and similar to restaurants, I mean, the amount of vacancy, gyms, galleries, restaurants, event spaces, there's so much empty real estate. We realized that hosting events was not just not permitted, it was also unsafe for a very long time, and we're all finding ways to do it properly now. So what we did was just communicate with all of our colleagues, regardless if they're other caterers, a lot of other caterers, a lot of other venue owners, and we made some extremely meaningful collaborations. One that I'm particularly proud of, and I hope you are okay with an example, is that we have this small, penthouse with a terrace space, very small space on 23rd Street. And we partnered with a comedy club called the New York Comedy Club. Unfortunately, they have not been permitted to reopen even at a small capacity, which is a separate issue altogether they're having with city officials. And so we essentially went into a partnership, a very informal, quick partnership with them, where we gave them completely unrestricted access to our venue. They use their venue, our venue, as their own with a set of keys. They set up outdoor, fully socially distanced comedy shows, and they essentially take all of our vacancy. So if we have 6 nights a week available, they take 6. If we have 4, they take 4. They sell tickets, and it's been incredibly successful. They cannot possibly afford to pay a minimum rent or whatever we would normally charge for our venue. So instead, we share a P&L. We both take on some liability for the event. And if there's profit or revenue to be shared, we have a P&L agreement where we take the bottom line and we profit share. And we are going on 2 months with them, and it's been an incredible experience. I made good friends, and we used to compete against folks like the New York Comedy Club for the, birthday party bachelorette business. We all wanted those events in our spaces, and now we find ourselves in a partnership. And I think what's most telling about these partnerships forged under the worst of circumstances is that nobody wants to let them go now. So there's a lot of discussion about post-pandemic. I know it's hard to imagine 6 months from now. We're discussing how we're going to keep this partnership alive and well, months and years past COVID, and how that's going to look like. So for us, it's opened a lot of doors that I would never have knocked on previously.
Irene, do you have any thoughts on competitors becoming collaborators?
Yeah, I guess, one of the things that a friend and I did early on in the pandemic was we started a GoFundMe called Unsung Restaurants. And what we were seeing was that lots of restaurants with a big newsletter following and a fancy PR firm, they were, creating GoFundMes to support their team. And we thought that was great. And we were also really worried that the places, the mom and pop shops, on the corner, the places that we rely on a regular basis to keep ourselves fed, where perhaps English is not the primary language, where they don't have an Instagram following. We were concerned that maybe there was not a great way for people to support those businesses. So we raised about $12,000 in a couple weeks, and people could just nominate any business that they felt like had really provided something to them before the pandemic. And so, I don't really think of those businesses as Mei Mei's competitors per se, but I think that this has forced us to look at the industry as a whole. And even though Mei Mei is taking what is actually, I think, more of a leap than a pivot. We've done a lot of pivoting, and it's kind of just spinning in circles at a certain point for us. I remain very concerned about the restaurant industry. And there is a part of me that feels like, okay, maybe I can do more to support restaurants if I take my business and start doing something a little bit different. And I can have a different perspective, or I can use my time to support other businesses that are trying to keep making it work. So I don't know if that speaks to competitors necessarily, but I do think that it just means taking a different angle when we look at the broader landscape.
Not fair enough. Okay, I want to get to, we have about 10 minutes to go. I want to get to the audience. The first question from the audience is obviously a really, really good one. What advice should be given, and we'll go around, what advice should be given to those that haven't been able to quickly or successfully pivot, whether it's because of a lack of finances or facilities or both or something else?
can start. And I saw there was another question about funding overall for
Yeah.
feeding the community. And I think one thing that's important, and Helah touched upon it, is don't try to do everything. I know right now we've seen the mistake of pivoting for the sake of pivoting. And everybody here knows the importance of being true to your brand. And the last thing you should try to do is move away from who you are as a brand and your own integrity and try to do something that is outside of your bandwidth. You know, for Helah was explaining, take care of your team. If you can't rationally donate meals without sacrificing, with sacrificing something within your own business, that can be really dangerous, and it's not for everyone. And I don't think everyone is looking for you to give up your own business for the sake of trying to donate meals. And so that's something that's really important. When we pivoted at the Hatchery, we launched Hatch Made Meals, which is a way for us to, we fundraise. So we were able to reach out to all of our partner companies, to foundations, and we were able to fund the program for a year, which was more than we could have expected. But the first response we started to receive was everybody suddenly thought the Hatchery has become a pantry, has become a place that is focused on donating meals. And we're not experts in it. There are far greater organizations that have built their foundation on providing meals to those without access. And so we are very careful in our messaging to say, we did not create this program to donate meals. We created this program to support entrepreneurs and struggling catering companies. Our mission is founded in supporting entrepreneurs. And if we can't help entrepreneurs generate personal wealth and wealth for their family and hire from within the community, we're in a community on the west side of Chicago that has some of the highest unemployment rates. And that's our goal. It's really about job creation and economic growth, but it's entrepreneur first. And so we had to be very careful because we noticed ourselves starting to shift and sway towards another direction. We said, no, we have to bring it right back into the point of this is supporting the entrepreneurs first. And so your brand is everything. And if it doesn't make sense for you, if it doesn't connect to your brand, don't do it. Don't feel like you have to give everything away. You need people to help you right now. And so I just encourage entrepreneurs out there to not feel like I can't afford to donate meals. I can't afford to pivot and risk spending more money that you don't have. So just think carefully about your brand and what you stand for. And if it makes sense, then absolutely try to explore ways to pivot that do not cost more from the business, or at least don't have the kind of proof of concept that you're looking for.
This is a question that was in the chat. What are the most interesting pivots that you've seen? And we'll take present company excluded. And in particular, what are the interesting pivots that you've seen that you think will be long lasting?
I think on my end, just, given the fact that we do work with so many restaurants, the idea of like a grocery restaurant and the grocery boxes that a lot of people are doing, I think that will be somewhat, will continue and persist throughout the pandemic, just because it does that additional revenue stream for these restaurants. And I think it also helps, if we're talking about the supply chain and, restaurants' role in the supply chain, I think it also really does show how restaurants have such, play such a role in supporting, smaller independent farmers and just the food supply chain in general. And so I think that there are places that have had provisions before, or, boxes to go, but there are so many more restaurants now that I'm seeing that are doing that. And I think it really helps also get fresher food into communities. I live in Crown Heights, and there's several restaurants in my area that are doing that. And instead of like eating at these restaurants now, people can buy these boxes and have access to those different, foods. So I think that's one thing that I've seen that will persist.
Lynnette, have you seen anything that's really stood out in especially in the beverage and spirit space?
I mean, I think we have to kind of regroup and rethink about how we really what kind of beverages we offer, because people are buying so much off premise now. And our selections have to be more curated and more unique rather than things people can get everywhere else. So we've had to change kind of what our P mix looks like, a bit of change in buying and how inventory is kept as well, because if there's going to be periods of ups and downs, I think everyone kind of felt a little nervous having like just kind of bulked up for spring menus and having all of this product sitting there. You know, we were lucky in New York to be able to return some portions of those products with the SLA, but you know, it's been working through that and just being a little more strategic. I think obviously in New York, I imagine we're going to push to keep the to-go cocktail thing going. You know I saw my
Hope
friend
so.
in Chicago how hard it was for them to not have that outlet, and how much they fought and struggled to make that happen. And I felt awful for them because that was a lifeline for a lot of places that I know, especially bars who couldn't reopen because they didn't really satisfy a big portion of the food requirement to have guests sitting outside. So to go with the snacks was the only way that a lot of those places could survive. So I think we'll see how that kind of changes the landscape for forever. And now with outdoor dining year round, we'll see what that means for New York. But yeah, I think there's just and that changes your staffing model quite a bit. You know, I think a lot of the measures that everyone has in place is probably also going to continue, because at this point we're conscious of how to keep our staff, you know, safe and healthy. And, you know, on a normal flu season, this could be an example of how you run your business, how you keep your teams organized. So that way one person getting sick still doesn't, you know, whatever kind of sickness it is, doesn't completely derail your entire establishment. So I think there's just been a lot of learning that way.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. All right, we have 5 minutes to go, so I want to turn it back to one final question for the panel, and that'll be, you know, let's think about the future for a second. What changes would you like to see in order to build a more sustainable food industry? It's kind of the most important question in the end, once we get all the way through this. So I'll go back around in order of my squares. So I'll start with you, Kathleen.
We also ask ourselves that question a lot. And for, you know, kind of touching on a few of the topics we've talked recently, you know, throughout the panel, is just, you know, collaborating with organizations that are looking at what sustainable means, whether that's for the environment, that's for our work culture, and is that for our food supply chain? Is it for the people that we're serving? What is sustainable, and what programs are out there, whether they're nonprofits like us or they're for-profit businesses, and really looking together to work together on those issues, because food touches so many different parts of our lives. It's highly political, and, you know, we can't address hunger and insecurity without looking at the wages in which people are paid within their industry, so that they can, you know, provide healthy food for themselves, or do they have access? If they can afford to buy healthy food for themselves, do they have access? So I think the biggest takeaway and what we're really working on is fostering those partnerships that are going to push the needle to a more sustainable industry. And you know, there's a lot of organizations or businesses that are really true to the area in which they address, and that's really wonderful. And I think that we can all better work together. Because that's, you know, the biggest thing that I ask myself almost every single day is what can we do more? And so we, you know, working together with organizations that are, you know, focusing on different aspects of sustainability.
Okay, Irene.
I was on a panel last night about food justice, and there were basically no restaurant people there. And so I think that there is a big question about the silos that we're in, and how, you know, the movement around food culture and how the movement, around food justice and how the actual food provision industry, where there are opportunities, like Kathleen said, for us to collaborate and for us to work more intentionally towards the same goals. And I would say underpinning all of that is what I would say is a cultural shift that needs to happen in terms of how we value food. Because you can get, 12 McNuggets for $1. And I think, folks here probably have a sense that that is not the actual cost, right? Not just in dollars and cents, but in terms of, the environmental impact, the human impact, the impact on those animals. That's not really what the food costs, right? And so when we think about all of the problems that kind of intersect within food, I think that appreciating the value of food is something that our society here in this country has a really long way to go on.
Love that. Helah?
Sorry. So for us, I mean, I think first is more in general, making sustainable changes to the company's DNA so you can successfully follow through with all of these values. I think that's very important. I mean, I loved what Irene just said as well. I couldn't agree more about understanding the value of food, how hard it is to grow good food that actually is good for the environment and good for the economy. And something I wanted to mention as well, because this connects to one of the earlier questions, is about how to pivot if you haven't pivoted yet. And this leads into a response for what I expect in the future. It's not too late to pivot. In fact, I think the issue a lot of us who pivoted early is that we've now pivoted 15, 20, 30 times. So if you haven't pivoted quite yet, I would say you're actually in a great position, and don't look a week ahead, because that's what I was doing in the early days. Don't look a month ahead. Look to see where the industry is going in the next 6, 12, 18, 24 months. Because if you're going to invest the limited time, resources, money, and energy, mental energy that you have at the moment, don't invest it in terms of pivoting COVID-based, because there is such a huge movement, whether it's the socioeconomic changes, the sustainability changes, the politic changes. You really need to try to look a little bit further ahead to make those decisions for your company, so you don't just exhaust yourself changing paths every day. So, what I expect for the future and what changes I'd like to see, I think it's very simple. I think everyone needs to just be more thoughtful about it. Think a little bit further ahead to make those changes really impactful.
Nice. Natalie?
I agree with everything that's been said. And I think what I'd like to see is more transparency, education, and acceptance throughout the supply chain. I think Irene really stated what is absolutely true, is that we've already built a system where the value has been set, and now people are complaining about a 4% or 5% COVID fee right now for relief. And if people really understood, you want organic, you want natural, you want healthy, but then at the same time, you don't want to spend more than $2 for a beverage. And so that's important to note. And I think that with more education, we're able to learn that, because it all comes down to the entrepreneurs and the business owners. It comes out of their pockets. They're paying for slotting fees, they're paying for distribution, they're paying for manufacturing, they're paying for sales. And we forget that as consumers, but it's everyone's responsibility. It's the distributors, the retailers, the suppliers. We all have to play a role. And I think, Irene, thank God that you showed your P&L, because people need to see that. If you don't know, you don't know. And, and until I ran a restaurant, I had no idea how important it is. Every cent is so important, but you don't know that as a consumer. So I think that's really something that I hope we see more of, is that kind of transparency where we gain that understanding.
Yeah, for sure. Lynnette, bring us home.
All right. Obviously those were extremely well-rounded answers. I think this is the one point where I don't throw myself into it. I think we have a lot more listening and understanding before we can really truly understand what changes are are really needed. I think when Mei Mei talks about, you know, being in a conversation about restaurant where no one from the restaurant's at the table, that happens all the time. And it was happening before this happened, it's happening now, and it'll happen after. And so until the balance of equity is shifted, you know, restaurant workers are not going to really have a full say in their, you know, their industry that they fuel and build. And I don't know the answer on how to change that to make it more sustainable, but I also do know that it's an industry that also, you know, offers work to a lot of people who don't have other options for work. And it is a place where pathways can be and careers can be built with very little formal education. And a lot of those barriers are set. So I guess I hope that more thoughtful conversations happen with the real people who need to be there, and that we get out of the politics of what it is and really get down to the humanity.
Well said, and a great place to wind up the conversation. So I want to thank my panelists. I hope our attendees enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. Listening to you all was informative and inspiring, and gives me some hope. So thank you all, and thanks to everyone who logged in to be part of our conversation. Tomorrow is the last day of the forum, and we'll be focusing on small business. And I am told there are still some slots available, so perhaps we'll see you at 12:30 tomorrow to talk about small business. Go to the website and sign up if you're interested. So thanks to everyone again. Nice spending some virtual time with you. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week.